Hi guys, this is Tom from NoCode Shorts, where I interview NoCode people from all over the world. And today with me is Kieran, who is not only building his own stuff on Bubble, but also launched one of the best templates on the market. Kieran, please introduce yourself and tell us more about this product.
Hi, my name is Kieran Ball, and I'm an indie maker, entrepreneur, Bubble developer based in the UK. I've been developing with Bubble since 2019. October 2019 was the fateful month when I discovered it, and I basically became instantly addicted to building mainly SaaS products because I think they're just the most exciting thing, the potential for subscription revenue and adding real value to the users' lives. So I've been doing that ever since 2019. And then more recently, I decided that I wanted to build a kind of master template that I could use to spin up my SaaS ideas faster and faster. And that became the bullet launch template, which I since launched on the Bubble template marketplace. And I'd love to show you it. So I'm going to share my screen now. As I said, the idea behind the bullet launch template was initially that I'd been building all these SaaS projects. I must have built between 20 and 30 of them just for myself, not even counting client projects. And obviously, the more you build, the more accustomed you become to kind of the process and the different building blocks that come with every SaaS. And you realize that a lot of the stuff is the same. But for some reason, I was still kind of starting from scratch each time. And I would copy and paste parts from old projects. But I figured, okay, why not have a master project that I can start from each time? And that kind of evolved, especially when Bubble released, I think it was late last year, they released the ability for you to make reusable elements and detach them so that you can essentially build your own functional UI kit within a Bubble app. So that really opened the possibility that I could build like a really decent template with loads of different functionality and UIs that people could kind of detach and reuse throughout their apps. So that was kind of the genesis of the idea. Right now, so this is the landing page, which is probably one of the best landing pages I've ever made. Is certainly the one I put the most time into, but it's got explaining the thought behind the project. The landing page is actually built with Framer. It's not built in Bubble.
It's built with this was my question, if it was built in Bubble or Framer.
I I didn't want to build it in Bubble because I know that like there's a load of reasons to use Bubble for landing pages, but certainly stuff like having an attached blog and things like that, I decided Framer would be the way to go for
Sure,
SEO purposes and things like that.
sure. And
So
the question about your story, because you said that you've been starting from scratch every time. That means you were not using any of the templates or any of the templates available in Bubble Store so far.
no, not really. I think like a lot of Bubble builders, I like to start. I like to make my projects kind of in my own way.
Yeah,
Um,
because some of the people just don't like templates.
Yeah, exactly. And
Hmm.
I've tried a lot of templates, or not a lot. I've tried a few templates. Certainly early
Hmm.
on when I was more of a beginner, I tried some templates. And I often just found I had a lot of things that I didn't need, or the main
Hmm.
problem was that they didn't have very good documentation, which just made it very hard for me to figure out why things worked. So
Uh-huh.
when I made this, I swore to myself that I was going to add loads of documentation. So kind of the idea is that it's part template, but it's also part course. And it's like I built it in, using as many best practices as I could.
Hmm.
But then I've got all these, like, I'll show you the docs here. So this is the documentation, and it's got like it goes into all this detail, but then it's got like videos for all the more complicated parts. Obviously privacy rules hugely important,
Yeah.
like, and then the kind of the most important bits are like how the dashboard nav menu works, because that is what you're going to have to edit, and then also how to create a new data type and a new UI. So the idea is that you're going to have this dashboard like most SaaSes have. You update what you want in the menu, but then according to your own database structure, you are going to reuse some of the UIs that I have built, so tables or various different views for looking at data, and you're going to customize them for your own use cases and your own data type. So I wanted to make it as easy as possible to do that.
And so this is the main difference between the other UI templates, that you've got the whole bunch of documentation and videos, right? What else?
Yeah, and it's also got so there are UI kits out there which are really amazing, like Frames and Basis. So I was using Basis and Frames quite a lot for previous projects, but the thing they lacked was a lot of the workflows and functionality, which now is possible to set up beforehand. So I didn't just want to drag on like a dashboard and then have that ready to go. I wanted to actually have like the menu all set up. So the menu I might as well just
yeah, let's
so
jump
this
into
is
the demo.
this is the app. So this is the landing page, which is obviously pretty much static, and it's got some like animations and stuff.
And this
So
one is built in. This one is built in Bubble.
this one is built in Bubble, yeah. And obviously the idea is that people will just customize all the text and all the logos and all the images for their own use case, and they can delete things they're not going to use. And then I have a demo login here, which just takes you straight in to the test user. As you can see, it's already switched to dark mode, but this was one of the things that took the longest, was the light mode and dark mode. Let me just get rid of that. So that looks okay. And then, so down the left, you can see this is a kind of selection of some of the main UIs. So I've got a create UI here, which you can use for creating stuff with AI or anything you want. I've got a calendar UI, which has 2 views. I've got a rows UI, image grid without images, pretty colors, and then I've got a chat, which you can't see anything because there's no chats, and then support, and also importantly settings here. So the idea is that it's multi-tenanted to start with. So any user that signs up, they will create what I've called an entity, which could be a company, organization, and then they will be able to invite other users to join their team within that entity. So that way you can have a multi-tenanted SaaS where users can only see data that is shared within their own company. So that's all set up from right from the start. So it just makes it much easier to build a SaaS where most SaaSes are going to be multi-tenanted. So it just makes it much easier to do all that without having to go to the hassle of setting all this stuff up from scratch.
So this is
And then,
this
of
is the
course,
starting
billing.
point, right? This is the starting point when you buy a template and you start with multiple options to choose from, including this create, calendar, rows, images, grid, and so on and so on. You can build your own dashboard using these components.
Yeah, and so all of this menu all runs off of an option set. So the idea is that you go into the option set, you customize whatever UIs you want to see or whatever options you want to see in this menu, and then you would say, okay, I want to have a data table, so I'm going to make a copy of the rows UI, and then I'm going to customize it for whatever data type I'm going to be using for. So it could be projects or tasks or people, and you just have to update the repeating group in here and then make a few other changes, which is kind of the same every time, and then you should be good to go. So it will already have like functioning search up here, and it will also have filters and stuff that you can just easily get working. And a couple of other things to mention is that it's got like subscription payments built in. So all the plans run off an option set, and it's integrated with both Stripe and Lemon Squeezy. So all you need to do is add your Stripe API key or your Lemon Squeezy API keys. You also need to obviously set up the plans within the Stripe or Lemon Squeezy dashboard and make sure the information agrees with what you have in your option set.
Sure, but this is the only thing that you need to do, and then it
Yeah.
just works, right? And you can choose
Yeah.
the Stripe or Lemon Squeezy. Well, today
Yeah.
it's just Stripe, right? Because they both lemon squeezy.
Well, yes,
But
exactly.
let's hope it will stay the same.
You can choose from Stripe or Stripe.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all works, and it's all like
Mhm.
paywalled. Well, at the moment it's paywalled on like the number of users you have, and it's got functionality like if you are, you're running a team, you're up to a maximum of like 10 users and you can't have any more on that plan. Users will still be able to join, but they will go into overflow mode, so they won't have access to the dashboard. But then
Mhm.
if you upgrade your plan, you'll be able to choose which users you can allow in under the limit. So there's a lot of like little things
Yeah,
like
this is
that.
really this is really powerful. I mean, this pricing and integration can be a separate template, right? Separate plugin just for this.
Yeah,
So, and it
exactly.
has
There's
included.
stuff like that
That's
which
impressive.
which probably doesn't even get mentioned half the time, but it actually took ages to do. And like all the payment have like all the payments have like webhooks and or API calls that are checking the validity of the payment event. So there's like security and stuff built into it, which I could have easily just missed out, but I was like, I want to do this properly, and make sure it's secure, and privacy rules and stuff like that. I wanted to make sure people were building solid apps that adhere to like bubble best practices.
So you are not using any of the plugins like for the Stripe built-in plugin or
Yeah, I am using the Stripe built-in plugin because
Mhm.
I always use it, and I find it like I find it like quite easy to use, and because with this
For Stripe
template I'm
it,
like,
it just works pretty well,
it
right?
just
But
works, yeah. And I have like an additional API call to check events coming from Stripe. So I don't like, so when they send a webhook, I do an API call back to check that it's valid. So that's like outside of the plugin, but apart from that, I just use the plugin because I want to use best practices, but at the same time, I want to make it accessible to kind of beginners or like fairly near beginners. So I didn't want to like be like, okay, I've written the entire Stripe interactions from scratch with API calls, and then if they want to change something, it would be really complicated. So I've tried to strike a good balance there, and also make it so that I would want to use it, and I personally am always happy using the Stripe plugin. And the other thing it has is emails. So I've integrated Postmark and Loops, and so I've actually got an option set where you just select whether you're using Stripe or Lemon Squeezy or Postmark or Loops, and then it will select those when it's like got conditionals on the back end workflows, which will select which one it's going to do the payment through or send their emails by. But that saves quite a lot of time as well, because all you need to do is just basically set up your account, and it's kind of ready to go. So that's quite useful too.
yeah, and integrating a mailing system is always a good idea. I mean, a lot of people are using the bubble built-in actions for sending emails, but I mean, it makes no sense because it often doesn't work because it's just for testing, right? And people are using it on production.
Well, I didn't know it was just for testing until recently when it went down, and then they said, oh, by the way, it's just for testing. But certainly if you want your emails to look professional, then you want them to come from your custom domain, not from bubbleapps.io or whatever.
Okay, so let's jump into the editor and show us how it was built and maybe some challenges that you have during building. Pretty advanced, really advanced app.
Yeah, sure. So this is the editor. As you can see here, there's not many pages, but there are a lot of reusables. So I've used the kind of emoji style of notation, which I borrowed from Kelly Claus, who is a thought leader in the emoji naming conventions. But yeah, basically, I wanted to turn everything into a reusable. So everything like from as simple as a file uploader. So that's literally just a title, a file uploader, and then a group to contain them. But if you are creating a form, you can then drop that in from your reusable elements here, and then you can just right click and detach the reusable element, and then you'll have your file uploaded there. So it's kind of the same as dropping it from here, except it's already nicely put into a group. And then obviously very importantly is that everything, all the text, all the elements use these universal styles, which are all saved in here. So if you did want to just drop a piece of text from the text elements, or you wanted to drop in a file uploader or whatever, you can just use the standard styling and it will be the same across the entire app. And the other important thing is that all of these have, when current users dark mode is yes, and then they will have different colors here. So all of the dark mode is done with these with this like conditional, which is on almost every element. And yeah, it works pretty well. And it means that if I like want to change one of these colors, I can, just doing it in the style variables.
If
A
your app
couple
have
of things.
different colors, you just need to go into the style variables, change it, and it will change the whole app.
Yeah, exactly. So you can change the fonts here and they will change across the entire app. And then you can change the colors here. So I've got a bit in the documentation about, you change the primary color, but then if you go to like a certain website, I can't remember, you can get a list of all the different tones. So you're going to want to match the tones for 900, 700, 300, and 100 and put them in here. And then everything across the app should look uniform. And yeah, it works really well.
So what were the major challenges when building the template? Because building the template, it's different than building an app, or it's the same?
It's different because the main thing is how to make it as simple as possible for people to come in here and understand it and be able to start customizing it. So like, for example, so if I go to the UI table, like classic rows, so if you were creating your own UI based on a data type, so you might first you'll go into the database here. These are all the standard data types that I have. So I have ones like this. This is what the chat works off of. So if you are if you want to have a user-to-user chat, that's already done for you. But if you wanted to add more functionality, that you wanted to have privacy rules split up by like teams and stuff like that, then you would need to add those fields and stuff on yourself. And then I've got this example data, which is basically everything you saw in that example dashboard. It's just like got like images and text and stuff like that. So all of the standard UIs run off this example data, but that's really only so that I can show that example dashboard, because the Bubble Marketplace says you need to have a demo of your project that people can click into. So I've got all of this stuff here so that when you open it up, you can see what it will work like. But when someone starts using it from fresh, you kind of want them to be able to see like this is what it should look like, but also you want it to be super easy for them to update. So when they clone one of these elements, the first thing they'll do really is go in here and they'll change the type of content for this repeating group to whatever custom data type they have created. And then they'll see, 10 issues, and then they'll have to go through one by one, fixing them and adjusting them and like changing the column fields here, changing like the create new pop-up. So this pop-up here, so it's got like some demo fields and stuff. So the bulk of their work is going to be like, okay, I've got a new data type, it's got 20 fields, I've got to create a form where people can create new ones of these, and then also it's using the same pop-up to do the editing. So they've got to do everything so it can work both as a create and edit, and then they've got to update the table so that it shows everything they want. And then also like when you click on an element here, it shows in the sidebar, and there's also like a kind of comments functionality, so a user can leave a comment on something, so they can decide whether or not they want to have that, but they also have to update this so it's showing all the information. So it's like it's still quite a lot of work, but if you compare it to what it would take to create this whole thing from scratch, it's like way less, especially as like this is totally responsive. So that, that part alone
Whoa, this is cool. So responsiveness is also built in.
takes ages,
Mhm.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's just a huge amount of work. So all of the different displays here are responsive, which took me ages to do. So when people come in, I want them to be able to like duplicate stuff and update it for their own use cases. But I want them to be able to do that as quickly as possible. So that was a real challenge because you want it to both look good, but also have not too many steps. So hopefully I've managed to do that okay.
And speaking
The
about time, you've mentioned that it took ages to build this. So how long did it take you to build it?
I think it took probably, well, I think I was working on it for about 4 months, not all the time, not full time, but part time for 4 months.
Mhm.
And yeah, it gets quicker as you go, because once you've got the style set up, and once you have the groups and like your spacing and everything like this, then it's easier to create new UIs which look good. But there was some small functionality. So like, this is the sign up login here. I had some real issues with getting this to work consistently. I was finding inconsistent errors when I was testing it, which were involved with, like, when a user signs up, it was assigning them a role based on like either what they'd selected, or just give them a default role. And then based on the user role that they had, as it went through the steps, it would decide whether or not to create a new entity attached to that user. But obviously, if they're joining as part of a team, then I don't want to create a new entity. I want them to join onto an existing entity. And basically, I contacted Bubble support because I was seeing this error, but it was only happening sometimes. And they said that because I had it all in one workflow, Bubble runs every action simultaneously, which I kind of knew that before, but I hadn't really appreciated that it would cause the issues I was having. So it would be like running step 3, assign entity, and that would be like only when the user's role is X. But the user's role, which was on like step 1, which was sign the user up and give them the role X, that was not fully completed by the time it was doing that conditional, which meant that sometimes the entity was being created and sometimes it wasn't. But the real problem was that the debugger, the step-by-step debugger in Bubble, was showing incorrect information. It was showing that the workflow was running to create the entity, but the entity was not being created. So it was
Yeah, because
extremely confusing.
debugger shows step by step, and the workflows are not run step by step, right? So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
hard to
And
debug.
but not only that, it was showing the wrong thing. It was saying this part is running, but it wasn't running.
Ah,
So
okay.
it would be like showing it, this is run, but then I look in the database and nothing was created. So it was extremely confusing. So yeah, that's just an example of like some of the tiny things that no one will ever appreciate, but that took me like weeks to solve. And in the end, I had to do this like user sign up, return data, and then like make changes to current user. So all of this is done in like separate custom events, which then like return data, or they don't run until like when a user has a role and an entity, then it's going to trigger this, which is going to like send them an email confirmation or not, depending on what you've selected. So like another thing is that all the user roles run off here, and in here you can specify whether you want them to have email confirmation required. You can say what you want their welcome page to be, and you can also specify which onboarding steps you want them to complete. So then it's always going to do a check whether they've done those onboarding steps, and if they haven't, then when they go to the dashboard, it's going to redirect them to the onboarding page and make them complete the onboarding steps. So
A lot of work, yeah, a lot of work on all this customization and stuff. I'm really impressed, man. This is so complex, and for the people who are using it, I mean, it gives you a lot of options. I mean, I think you can run most of the SaaS that you had in mind with this template, right?
Yeah, yeah, but I know it is complex behind the scenes, but I don't want it to
Yeah,
seem complex to people because I have got
yeah. I
like a
meant
bunch of
complex
people.
in terms of building it, in terms of building the
Yeah,
template for the people to make it easy to use, right, for the people.
yeah, but like I wish I didn't have to do all this stuff. This stuff is annoying. I wish there were a simpler way, but yeah, it's just funny that this is kind of what you have to do to get a consistent sign up process. It's kind of a shame because I wish it was like super simple and then beginners would be able to jump in and just be like, oh, I change this here and here. So this is probably the most complicated bit. And I've tried to like explain it as best I could in the videos, and hopefully most users will not need to edit this because this kind of should just work, and everything they need to change should just be like change an option in an option set depending on whether you want the user to confirm their email or create an entity or not. But yeah, the rest of it I've tried to keep as simple and consistent as possible. So when you reuse a UI, you'll see the same thing in every UI, and you'll know how to update it. But yeah, as with any SaaS, there's no real shortcut. Like there's always going to be a lot of work to put into it. But this has certainly taken out like, yeah, I say like 100 hours on the website. And I actually think that's quite accurate. Like this has easily taken way more than 100 hours to build. But if I had to build it again from scratch, it would still probably take me 100 hours, even though I've done it before. It's just, yeah, stuff takes time, especially when you're dealing with UIs and things like that.
To sum up, what are the pros and cons of using the templates when building with Bubble? Because when we started, I mentioned that some of the people, they just don't like using templates, especially if they're more advanced. But some of the people who are starting with Bubble, they are starting with looking for template and building from templates. So now you build a template that is quite popular. What are the pros and cons for the users?
I think it depends on the kind of person you are. Like I know a lot of really experienced bubble devs. In fact, Kelly Claus, who's super experienced, she's built a project with this, and I know she found it quite hard because she has her way of doing things, and I know a lot of like experienced bubble developers have their own way of doing things, and it's quite hard. Like I'm definitely one of them. It's quite hard to adapt to another person's style of building. So like certainly if you've ever done any work with AirDev, you'll know that they use a canvas boilerplate, which is, I'd say this is kind of similar to canvas but way simpler and way less bloated. So a lot of the AirDev developers have to learn the AirDev way of building, which takes time. But I think once you've put in the time and understood how it works, then like your speed to build things just massively increases. So I'd say I'd say people who don't yet have strong opinions or strong like preferences for how they do things, if they're interested in learning kind of best practices, which I've picked up from AirDev and from other places, as well as building their products quickly, I think this will be perfectly suited for them. If you're the kind of person that you've been doing this for a long time and you have your own preferences on the way you do things, then you might find it hard to adjust your brain to the way this works, in the same way that you'll find it hard to adjust to working with AirDev's Canvas. But yeah, I think there's definitely a large sweet spot of people who will just find that this just gets them so far ahead so quickly, that they're willing to kind of spend some time learning exactly how it works.
And your template is for the beginners or for the advanced users? How much experience do you have to have in Bubble to start using it?
I would say from what I've seen so far of the people who are using it at the moment, I've been quite surprised at the number of people who are using this for their first ever Bubble project. I thought it would be slightly more towards the intermediate end. But yeah, I've seen some really motivated people who are just going through the documentation and learning it, like paying attention to how it all works, and they're using it as kind of a learning tool for Bubble. So I would say not complete beginners. Like, you need to have at least done some research on Bubble and done all the free resources that they have out there, all of the great YouTube videos that they have on their YouTube channel. I think that would be a good place to start. But then once you have done those, if you're the kind of person that likes to learn by building a real project, then I think jumping in with the boilerplate and making sure you look at all the documentation and take time to understand it is actually a really good way of learning. So I would say anything from just above beginner or complete beginner to intermediate. And then as you go more advanced than that, I think people tend to become a bit more opinionated on how they build things, and they maybe have their own preferences for the way they build. So it may not be so suitable for the more advanced builders out there. You know, my mission in life really is to help people, non-technical people like me, to launch the SaaS ideas that they've had burning away in the back of their minds but have not been able to make reality. So if you have any questions, or you want to know more about Bubble, is Bubble the right platform for you? Is the boilerplate the right tool for you to start with, or the right template? Just feel free to reach out. My email is kieran@nocodelife.com, or you can find me on Twitter @nocodelife. And I'm always happy to answer questions or discuss like the SaaS that you want to build. And I'll be totally honest if I think that the boilerplate is not the best way to go, or that Bubble's not the best way to go. Like, I'm not trying to hard sell anyone. I want everyone to like start off from the best footing they possibly can. But if you do think you want to go ahead with the boilerplate, then the website is bulletlaunch.com. From there, you can click through and you can see the docs before you've bought anything, so you can watch the videos and decide if it's for you or if it's too advanced or whatever. So yeah, hopefully this has been like interesting, and I've tried to be as transparent as possible. But yeah, feel free to contact me if you have any questions.